This is Amplifying Autism, where every voice matters and every story shines. Join us as autistic authors, professionals, and trailblazers share their journeys, real stories, and real insight from those changing the world, one conversation at a time. My friend Jenny Smith is a writer, a pastor, a poet, and a nervous system practitioner. As a trauma-informed guide, she helps people face what hurts so they can live with greater clarity, courage, and compassion. With a Master of Divinity and over 20 years of pastoral and spiritual leadership, Jenny brings a blend of embodied coaching, soul care, and deep listening to her work. As an autistic and ADHD practitioner, her approach is shaped by lived experience. Jenny believes that healing emerges not from pushing harder, but from honoring the body's wisdom, boundaries, and truth. Welcome to the podcast, Jenny Smith. I'm so happy to welcome Jenny Smith to our podcast today. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you.
Now, I have known Jenny for a while in different settings. As a pastor and as a poet, I follow her work. But one thing that I know about Jenny is she has not always known that she was autistic. Jenny, would you tell us a little bit about your journey of discovery?
Yeah. Thank you for having me here today. I I've always been anxious. So my story was I was the anxious one in the family, and lots of other siblings diagnosed with ADHD along the way, and I never really thought to question that for me. Just I was the anxious one. And it was it was like 38, 39, right in there. I'm 43 now. And was talking to my brother-in-law one day about our work habits. And I said this funny little thing that I do. And he's like, huh, that's not like a typical thing that people do. I was like, yes, it is. He's like, I don't think so. And long story short, got an ADHD diagnosis first, started some medicine. And about 4 weeks later, I was like, huh, there's a bunch of other stuff in here that kind of lines up with, oh, this might be what autism presents as in female adults that have masked it really well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, 4 or 5 months later, I got the autism diagnosis, and I'll never forget the day my assessors leaned into the Zoom screen and said, "Congratulations, you're autistic." And it was so freeing, so delightful. And of course, all the complicated feelings for sure, but it was a
Yeah.
really big turning point in my own story that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. And how has your life changed since you got that news?
Hannah Gadsby, in one of her Netflix specials, says getting the diagnosis was an exfoliation of shame. That's exactly what's happened in my story.
Yeah.
All these beautifully, terribly hard superpowers have reasons, and I'm not broken, and relationships are tricky to navigate, and work is tricky to navigate, and now I know why. So it's changed everything for the better. There are days I wish I could go back and not know, because then in theory, life felt a little easier maybe, but it was only because I was suppressing so much of my actual lived experience. So now it gets to be here, and it's not always easy. But again, the knowing, just I still am 4 years later trying to find words for how good it has been for me to know.
That's wonderful. Now, as a pastor, which is how I first met you, um, I'm guessing that your being autistic and knowing that you're autistic would give you a, an ability to really understand and empathize with other people who have struggles. And I know a lot of people who struggle come to the church. How has
Yeah.
that helped you in your ministry?
Yeah, I think learning to be a high masking autistic person meant that I was able to scan a room and kind of sense where people were at, and then I would know how to act as well. Well, what that turned into was some pretty good empathy skills with folks, and, so it's fun sometimes to see when our survival instincts end up also being a being kind of a public service if we know how to use them well with good boundaries. So, yeah, I'm able to resonate with people pretty quickly when they're sharing a challenge. I think that helps in pastoral care. One of the downsides is that in a pastoral system in a church, that's a lot of people and a lot of stories and a lot of emotions. And I
Yes.
like to say that I feel like neurotypical people have 3 or 4 sensors to pick all that up, and I have 50, and I just feel it all so deeply, so
Yes.
strongly, and that's a lot. So I used to get panic attacks when I was preaching, and I
Mm.
didn't know why, it was so scary, and over time realized I just I I was so dysregulated, so overwhelmed, and, learned how to heal a lot of some of those patterns, but, um, yeah, it's been a unique position to be in as an autistic person, for sure.
I know you've heard the myth that autistic people lack empathy, and of course, that's not true. In fact, the autistic people I know have super empathy or hyper empathy or a really intense feeling of other people's feelings. Has that helped you or maybe gotten in the way of your ministry?
I think both. I really have what they call that kind of justice sensitivity where,
Yes.
yeah, I don't some people, it's just a passing thought or a passing discomfort. I'm, like, gripped. And so when I see something unjust happen in someone's life, or even in a national headline in our global community now,
Yes.
like, oh. And so part of my ministry and work in the world, and even through writing, has been I have to bear witness to what I am observing, because if I don't, I will be sick and I
Yeah.
will not be well. So, in a weird way, me paying attention is what keeps me functioning. And yet, what autistic people, right? Sometimes what we see is we cut through everything that people don't want to talk
Yes.
about, which then makes you kind of unpopular. But in this day and age, I think we're really important.
Yeah. And the goal is not popularity contest, is it?
No, no.
I have really appreciated that, truth in your poetry, that you really do cut through the nonsense, and I think that empathy reminds me also of Greta Thunberg, who has such empathy for the planet, and she has her way of expressing it, and you have poetry and your ministry. Um, has your poetry changed since you knew you were autistic, or has it always come in the same way, straight from the heart, from the truth?
I think it took me a long time to identify as a writer. Uh, my kind of black and white compartmentalized brain was on the autistic side was like, "You are pastor. That is what you are."
One
And
thing
one
only.
thing. And then but my ADHD is kind of more blurry and just kind of go with the flow. So
Many things, yeah.
they like to compete and dance together sometimes. But, I remember struggling with, "But I think I could also be a writer." And it was like this huge secret that I would tell myself. And then one day I was like, "I think I'm allowed to be both." And so, um, I think it's always been there, but I had to give myself some permission and
Yeah,
invitation and do that really hard deconstruction work to say, "Yeah, what you write might make people feel uncomfortable, but if
yeah,
it is true for you, that's what matters." And what
yeah,
I've learned now is that is how I regulate. That the dysregulation I was stuck in, felt terrible. And so now I'm finding the little practices that actually make me feel more alive, but I had to wrestle with me being more alive as an autistic human was going to make other people uncomfortable. And
yeah.
after a lifetime of fawning, I just had to
It's hard.
realize I was worth that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, some of our listeners might not know that term, fawning, but they might recognize the experience. Can you put in your own words what fawning is to you?
Gosh, I'm still
Mm,
learning, but I
me too.
it is a prime nervous system state that I live in. So I do a lot of nervous system work right now and learning for the next new adventure I'm doing. But we all live right in this. Like we have home away from home states. So we have like ventral where we're just really connected, we feel safe and good. And most people know fight or flight or fleeing or freezing, but fawning is this: I sense danger, but I am going to be safe by smiling, by conveying that I'm okay, and I will dismiss whatever experience I'm actually having in my body. And so, as an autistic person, especially as an autistic white woman, that is how I've learned to stay safe over the years. But now I'm stuck in it often, and I have to work really hard to release it and let my system be who it actually is.
And I know you are not alone in the fun response. And not only autistic women, but I think other women have that same response because of the way that they were raised.
Yeah.
Um, Now you talked about your you had to realize that you could be a pastor and a poet. Maybe not a pun and a king, but now there's even more that your ADHD side is saying you can be more than one thing. So I'd love to hear what's next for you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. So, yeah, the brief little setup to that is I've been a pastor in the United Methodist Church for 15, 20 years and have enjoyed so much of it. Have gotten to work with incredible communities of faith in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Florida, Ohio. Wonderful humans. And I always had this sneaking suspicion that something wasn't quite right with the way that I embodied that role. But you just keep going, you're building your career, 20s, 30s, you just go. And I burn out really hard from one of my pastoral positions a few years back, took a year and a half off, learned I was autistic and ADHD, and then was like, I think I want to go give it another try. So we moved to Oregon. And I said, but the only way is if I'm an out autistic pastor. Like, no more hiding this.
Yes.
People need to know. That was my experiment. So for the
Mhm.
last 2.5, 3 years, I've been the pastor at this lovely community in Oregon. And you know what? It's just so bittersweet. They loved me so well. They created so much safety. They let me adjust my job, adjust expectations. They let me be my unmasked self so great that I healed more and I learned that this actually isn't the best role in the world for me. And so it's been sad to say I need to move on, but they've also been supportive, even though they're sad. And so next, I'm really curious about forming a container. I'm calling it the gentle way. And I want to work with people, especially neurodivergent people, because I love us so much,
Yes.
um, who maybe church has been tricky, but also therapy can sometimes be tricky. And
Yeah.
I'm curious about that kind of group of people right between those worlds where they want to learn to trust their bodies in some new ways, especially through nervous system stuff. And we just know that we're so highly dysregulated for a really good reason. We've had to try to protect ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm learning a lot about how to help us do that better and do that in a way that we can breathe again and be in this glorious body that we have in a world that is not designed for us. So, yeah, I'm super curious to see where it'll take me, but I want to work with people one on one, maybe in
Yeah.
groups, maybe in retreats. And I'll bring in like pastoral care vibe, but it can be faith based, but it can also not be faith based. And that feels okay too. So, yeah.
I think that is so exciting. Because although both therapy and church has been very, very valuable for many people, it those neither one of those two things work for everybody. There are people who have been harmed by a therapist who didn't understand them, or a pastor who didn't understand them, and to have someone who absolutely does understand them is that's a wonderful gift that you're giving. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it'll be fun to explore. And I'm holding it really loosely to just see where it goes, but it's obviously scary and risky to step outside the kind of known role that I've had.
Yeah.
But I made a decision a while back that my body makes my decisions now. And,
You
because
listen to it.
I ignored her for so long and suppressed everything for so long. One interesting part of my story, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia when I was 17. Like, that's
Ouch.
an amazing amount of suppressing my real experience
Yeah.
so I could just function and be, a human. And so it's really interesting now to honor if my body has a lot of curiosity and joy about something, I'm like, let's go.
Yes.
And if something
Smart.
feels really restrictive and suppressive, I was like, well, we've done
Yeah.
that before. Let's not do that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You've learned to trust yourself and your body.
Yes.
It's so important.
Yes. Yes.
And that you will be able to help other people get to that point of trusting themselves when they have maybe been had felt like somebody was gaslighting them. People telling you you don't feel that way or that's not the way it is. It's going to be so valuable for them to be able to come to you.
I hope so. I'm yeah, I'm
I think
I'm
so.
nervous. I'm excited. But yeah, you just right, you sometimes in life have those moments where you're like kind of fork in the road moment. And you're like,
Yeah.
you just know. You got to at least go explore the thing and we'll see where it
Yeah.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
So, Uh, there are people listening right now who are at a fork in the road that you were at some years ago when you first found out about your autism and your ADHD. And now that you've been along that path for a while and come to understand what that means for you, do you have any words of wisdom or advice to our listeners who are just starting on this journey?
Mm, I think I wish that someone had taken me out for a cup of hot chocolate then and just leaned over and said, you are not broken. It's going to be okay. There's a way that you've learned to survive in this world, and you are amazing for learning how to do that. And that has cost you greatly. And people don't always see that cost. And you might be kind of gaslighting yourself right now, saying there's no way. But if you're down the rabbit hole on assessments and reading books and listening to podcasts, then there's a pretty good chance this is you. And there's millions of us, there's way more than we even
Yes,
know, who
there's so many.
walk and live with this neurotype. And that's all it is. It's a neurotype to me. And so I think the more of us that bravely venture into this, we find so much healing on the other side. We find so much solidarity. We get to keep setting up our world so that it fits more of who we are.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing is, when it fits us, it still works for everyone else too. And this advocacy work is really healing to now kind of step back and say, let's walk together. I had a few
Yes.
people that said it to me at the time. I'll remember my first friend that I told, and I was like, I think I'm autistic. And it felt like the biggest, scariest thing to say.
Yeah.
And now I'm autistic. And
Out.
this is what autism can look like.
Yes.
I'm so used now to people going, "Oh, but you're well so eloquent and you have all these words." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Yes, because I'm freaking brilliant in my brain
Yeah.
and I have meltdowns and I have sensory capacities. And people are really confusing and annoying and don't just say what they mean. And like
Yeah.
life is weird, but also we're brilliant. And so
Yes.
let's create more spaces where we get to be brilliant and safe. And the world needs
Yeah.
us. The world
Yes.
needs us. That's what I would say. There's my pep talk.
Yeah. I love it. So, I, I think people are going to be interested in learning more about what you're doing. Now, if somebody is in Salem, Oregon, do you want to tell them where you're currently preaching your
Sure.
pastoral?
Yeah, I get to hang out with people at Morningside United Methodist Church in Salem, Oregon. And online, I write in a couple different spots. I have a Substack,
Yes.
and the best place probably to go, jennysmithwrites.com, kind of is a hub for all the things. And starting next summer, yeah, thegentleway.co is where I'll be starting a new adventure. And
Oh, excellent. And do you have a book of poetry that people can buy at this time, or not yet?
yes,
Oh,
so the different themes. So there's one on grief. My
yes.
youngest brother passed away 4 years ago, and I wrote poems through that first year of how do I make sense of sudden loss like that. So that's been a really helpful one for anyone if you know someone going through a season of grief. Then I wrote one on just kind of coming home to ourselves and kind of that self identity work, telling the truth. And then a third one was on, it's called Gently Fierce, and it's poems of rage and resistance and how we're handling this current moment in our country. And as a pastor, I don't shy away from the work of
Mhm.
faith around that. So that was really um, important to share that one. And I have another one coming on autism, but it's not quite there yet. We'll get there soon. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, even though it has been years since my late husband died, reading your grief poems really
Mm,
speaks to me because when we lose someone, even though we can say, well, life goes on, I'll create a new life for myself. But to be able to read those poems and really feel that connection in grief, it was just really valuable. I loved that. And
mhm.
of course, I really love your the ones that speak to what is happening in the world, because that's so important.
Yeah.
Do you have a poem that, before we say goodbye, that you could share with our listeners?
I would love to. It's hard to pick just one, but I picked one that jumped out to
Oh,
me.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll read it. I'll read it. My body whispered the truth for decades. I didn't listen at first, convinced I could overrule her whispers with brute force. Then I started listening. She told me her name was anxiety. We became colleagues, then friends. But the whispers continued. Rabbit trails took me to perfectionism and burnout, panic attacks and therapy, immense healing and ADHD. Still the whisper, until one day the whisper stopped and grinned. Welcome home, sweet girl. You made it. Autism.
That is so lovely. And I know that our listeners will be able to resonate with that. Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being with us today. This has been lovely.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you're continuing to do in this community. It means so much to so many.
Oh, thanks. What a delightful episode with Jenny Smith. I'm fascinated by the new role she's transitioning into as a somatic practitioner with The Gentle Way, drawing from somatic experiencing, nervous system attunement, inner child work, internal family systems, and a spacious, progressive Christian spirituality. She supports people in tending the memories and stories held in the body so they can move through life with more grounding and self trust. Jenny creates compassionate spaces where people can slow down, reconnect with themselves, and engage healing as sacred, courageous work. I hope you listened to the end of this episode because Jenny shared one of her poems, and it is eloquent. Thanks for listening to Amplifying Autism. I'm Wendell Whitcomb Marsh. Looking forward to next time. You've been listening to Amplifying Autism, celebrating the voices that shape a more understanding world. Don't miss the next episode. More stories, more insight, and more voices that matter.